People in arranged marriages, what's it like? My family lived by one rule. You pay what you owe, no matter the cost. So when I was 19 and found out my father had borrowed $200,000 from the Kozlov family, I knew our lives were over. My father sat at the kitchen table with his head in his hands while my mother paced and chain smoked. The deadline was 3 days away, and we had nothing. Then Boris Kozlov himself showed up at our door with his son Nikolai. Boris looked at me the way you'd examine a car before buying it. He turned to my father and said, "Your debt disappears tonight if she marries my son." My father didn't even look at me before agreeing. My mother just lit another cigarette and stared at the wall. The wedding happened in Boris's basement. No dress, no flowers, just papers to sign, and men with guns watching. Nikolai was 28 and had dead eyes. After the ceremony, he leaned close and whispered, "Your currency, nothing more. Remember that." The abuse started that first night. He showed me a room in his house with no windows and a lock on the outside. He said that's where I'd live if I caused problems. He monitored my phone calls and read my texts. If I took too long at the grocery store, he'd show up and drag me out by my arm. He'd remind me what his family did to people who betrayed them, how they made examples of entire bloodlines. He installed cameras in every room except the bathroom. When I showered, he'd bang on the door after exactly 10 minutes. He picked my clothes each morning and inspected me before we left the house. If my makeup wasn't right, he'd wipe it off roughly and reapply it himself. He weighed me every week and controlled my portions at meals. Every week we had dinner at Boris's house. I had to sit silent while they discussed their business like I wasn't there. Drug shipments, territory disputes, names of people who wouldn't be problems anymore. Nikolai would rest his hand on my knee under the table, squeezing harder if I showed any reaction. His mother would smile at me and say things like, "Such a good girl, knows her place." My parents called once a month to make sure I was being good. They never asked if I was happy or safe, just reminded me that my father's life depended on my cooperation. My younger sister wasn't allowed to talk to me because they didn't want her getting ideas. The breaking point came when Nikolai brought home another woman. He made me serve them dinner while they laughed and touched each other. When I dropped a plate, he backhanded me in front of her. She laughed and said, "Is this the debt payment? She's not even pretty." That night, while they were in our bedroom, I sat in the kitchen and realized I'd rather die trying to escape than live another day as property. I started planning carefully. I saved grocery money in tiny amounts and hid cash in tampon boxes. I memorized bus schedules and studied maps during my allowed library time. I smiled more, acted docile, made Nikolai believe I was finally broken. It took 6 months to save enough for a bus ticket to another state. I practiced walking with different postures in the bathroom mirror and studied accents on YouTube videos during my supervised internet time. "You belong to us," Nikolai had said once. "There's nowhere we won't find you." The night I ran, I left during his poker game when he'd be distracted for hours. I took nothing but the cash and clothes I could layer. I'd been putting sleeping pills in his vodka for weeks, tiny amounts so he'd be groggy but not suspicious. At the bus station, I threw away my phone and bought a ticket with shaking hands. For 48 hours, I didn't sleep, certain every stop would bring men with guns. I switched buses 3 times and doubled back twice to confuse anyone following. In a truck stop bathroom, I cut my hair with stolen scissors and dyed it black with a box kit. I traded my coat with a homeless woman and bought men's clothes from a thrift store. By the time I reached my destination, I looked nothing like the girl who'd fled. I ended up in a small mountain town where I got a job washing dishes under a fake name. For 2 years, I jumped at every car door slam and every Russian accent. I moved constantly, never made friends, worked jobs that paid cash. I learned to spot surveillance, vary my routes, and keep